Hello everyone, my name is Paul Donaher and I am Director of Client Services here at Radius. Thanks to all of you for attending today's roundtable on best practices from conception to activation in research and insights. Firstly, as I say in all of these occasions, I hope everyone is staying safe and doing well in the current environment. The roundtable today will be moderated by Joanne Suh, who is a Senior Vice President of Client Services here at Radius. And our three panelists, who you can see here, are Kim Folds, who is VP of Content Research and Evaluation at Sesame Workshop, Chris Cachel, who is Senior Director of Customer Experience at LendingTree, and Kiki Rydell, who is Vice President of Strategy and Insights at MilkPep. The roundtable is scheduled for a maximum of 45 minutes, and you can type a question on the screen if you would like to ask any questions of the panelists. Of the 45 minutes that we have allotted today, the team will speak for about 30 minutes, so we should have time for some Q&A at the end. And by way of introduction to the content, during today's roundtable, amongst other topics, you'll come away with hopefully an enhanced understanding as to how to identify strategic needs that research can solve, how to get the most out of your strategic partners, how to craft the right insights, which is a craft, and how to integrate insights throughout an organization successfully. You'll hear from Kiki, Kim, and Chris on real-world ways that they get the best out of insights for their respective organizations. As I've got used to pointing out in these online learning sessions, like many of you, some of us are bunkered down in our home offices or tucked away in a corner of our homes. And if you hear a child, a spouse, a dog, a cat in the background, please forgive us. We'll do our best to minimize that, and forgive us also if there's any small technological snafus given where we all are. So to our three panelists. Kiki is responsible for the insights behind the National Milk Marketing Campaign. She works with a whole raft of stakeholders to deliver the kind of leadership that I'm sure everyone will recognize when I just say, got milk? And all the other successful campaigns run over the years so familiar to us. Besides being a milk enthusiast, Kiki has two teens, keep her busy. And I understand that the silver lining of COVID for Kiki has been her transformation into be a dog lover, and her loyal sidekick is Josie. I have to also say, as a proud Dane, Kiki provides to you all a personal recommendation. Next time you're in Manhattan, to take a detour to the Danish Bakery, which apparently is really close to the Radius New York office. I haven't been to it myself, but I look forward to visiting there. Kim is responsible for content research and evaluation at Sesame Workshop. Sesame Workshop is the non-profit educational organization behind Sesame Street, which reaches over 150 million children in more than 150 countries, providing inspiring content. And Kim quite literally helps parents, like many of us here, bring up smarter, stronger, and kinder children throughout the world. Not only for that, but Kim has my considerable admiration as she's currently in training for the New York City Marathon, which I think is this Sunday, Kim. So good luck on that.
Thank you.
Chris is the Senior Director responsible for customer experience at LendingTree. Chris is passionate about customer centricity and using insights in ways that make people's lives better, not least in using the jobs to be done approach, of which he's a big advocate. In his current role, Chris has the ability to better serve the financial needs of every potential borrower in the US, which I, for one, Chris, am hugely appreciative. Like Kim, Chris pursued postgraduate studies at UCLA and now lives in Charlotte, North Carolina with his wife and 3 young kids. Thank you all 3 of you for being part of this roundtable today. And with that brief introduction, Joanne will take it from here. Joanne.
Thanks, Paul. And Kiki, Kim, and Chris, great to see you again. Well, we'll go ahead and get started with you, Chris, the last to be introduced. And really what we'd love to kick off with is just share a little bit about how you use insights within your organization, and maybe give a recent example of one that created change or created an answer to a business question.
Yeah, thanks, Joanne, and thanks for having me. Thanks for the introduction, Paul. So for LendingTree, the way we use research is both high level and low level. At the high level, we are really in a period of just massively increasing personalization, massively improving customer experiences across our entire industry. We certainly see this across our competitors, some competitors doing it better than others. And so we really are in just a strategic position right now where we have to understand our customers better than we've ever understood them before, and then serve them personalized and tailored experiences to help them accomplish their goals. So doing research is where that all begins. If we're going to do what customers need us to do, we really have to understand deeply and precisely what they need us to do, and then understand how to best do that for them, and what are they missing, what experiences are they using, and what do they perceive as the gaps that they're not getting served with today. So we have a great desire and a great focus to continuously understand our customers better and understand how to serve them better. To that end, we've worked a lot with Paul and the Radius team to do a series of projects over the last year to understand several of our verticals. We have about 15 different product verticals at LendingTree, things like credit cards and mortgages and auto loans and student loans and other financial products. Each one of those has different set of customers with different journeys and different goals and jobs that they're coming to us to hire. And so we did some great work with the Radius team to really spell out what are those steps on the journey. How do customers start the consideration process, and how do they start shopping, and how do they make the decisions about which loan offer to go with over other loan offers, and what prevents them from moving forward with a specific loan offer. And so that research, the output of that research has become very central and strategic to conversations we're having with our product teams, with our marketing teams, about how do we do a better job serving those customer needs, and what are the things that we should be doubling down on and focusing on when it comes to helping our customers accomplish the things that they've come to us to accomplish. So that research really has been just wonderful thing to align our teams in solving customer problems.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Chris. Kiki at MilkPep, can you talk a little bit about how you use insights within your organization?
Of course, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. Insights are hugely critical to MilkPep and span the gamut for a couple of reasons. First of all, we don't actually sell a product, right? We sell a message that milk is good for you and you should consume milk, and so should your children. So as such, we don't sell a product, right? We can't measure our success in sales or in distribution increases, any of that stuff. So as such, primary research such as equity tracking it's very important for us in just to measure our success and whether or not we get traction in the marketplace on the messages that we're putting out there, recall, and so much. But it serves another couple of purposes also. Our industry is very light on consumer research bandwidth. So in many cases, MilkPep is the go-to source for category information. There's probably a couple other national organizations that do the same thing. But most of these brands, they have a sales team. They do not have a consumer insights team. So you're looking at it right here, and they'll call and they'll ask all sorts of questions, and which helps inform what we do and try to improve how we get the information out to as many people as possible. So one of the things that we have worked a lot with our research partners on is sort of on the third piece, which is our how insights really fuel our strategy and our comps. So one of the things, we're in 96% of households out there. We obviously do not have the budget to reach all 96% of these households. So segmentation work and in-home ethnographies, in-depth interviews, all that stuff really helps us prioritize our targets and pick which of these 96% of households, or even within the households, that we should be talking to. We've done some great work with Radius, where we actually talk to the parent and the kid together and separately, compared and contrasted them, because as I know, as a parent of two teens, we don't always agree and we don't look at the world the same way, and thank goodness for that.
Well, that's so interesting. So Kim, tell us a little bit about how you are using insights within your organization at Sesame Workshop.
And I want to echo my fellow panelists. Thank you for being here. I'm thrilled to be part of this group. So Sesame Workshop uses research in a few different ways. We have two research teams. One is market research and one is content research, which I represent. We use research to run needs assessments at the start of any program, whether that's a new season of a television show or some type of community engagement initiative. And that's to really understand the needs of the community to make sure that our programming is meeting those needs. We run formative research, and this is really where the partnership with Radius comes in, where we rely on Radius to help us run these research studies. Through formative research, we test our video and print materials with children and their families. We test for appeal, relevance, and comprehension, because ultimately we want to make sure that kids find our content fun and funny, that it relates to them, that it looks like them, that it sounds like them, and that they understand the educational messages that we want to teach them. We do this throughout the life cycle of content creation, and ultimately we provide the findings and recommendations to our education and production teams so they can then integrate that into the final product. Our third big bucket of research is impact research, which we again try to incorporate throughout the cycle of the program to understand any changes in knowledge, behaviors, and attitudes related to the educational messaging. And we can run this in a variety of ways depending on the scope of the project itself. Some recent examples where particularly we partner with Radius is in our international work, that we have done a lot of work in humanitarian context, supporting children, particularly in the Middle East and South Asia, who have been affected by conflict and have now been displaced. And so we are in the process of creating content for those children and their parents. And so we rely on Radius to test that content directly with those children and their parents so that we can, again, provide those findings and recommendations to our teams.
Awesome, thank you for that. So Kim, I'll ask you the next question since you just finished up. So obviously all of you have stakeholders that you work with in your organization that need insights. So what are some cues or some telltale signs that primary research is the solution for their questions?
Yeah, primary research has been integrated into our model at Sesame Workshop since our inception in 1969. That was always fundamental to the content creation process. Our founders wanted to make sure that the voices of children were central to the work that we do. That doesn't mean that we don't continually meet challenges, whether it's timeline or budget challenges, to making sure that it really is firmly embedded. So one approach is certainly reminder of our mission in the way that we always rely on centering children's voices to make sure content is representative of them. But then it's also the importance of that front-end investment on research to make sure that we are creating responsive content, so that we do not ultimately create a beautiful piece of content that does not resonate with families, children don't see themselves in it, or they don't understand the educational message. So it's not just the importance of research for itself, it's that it's a good long-term investment for the piece of content that you're creating.
Chris, any builds on that? How do you, when you're speaking to your stakeholders, how do you know, what are the signs where you know primary research is the right solution?
Yeah, there's two main ones that we think about. The first is just kind of building off of what Kim just said. Like if there's a big bet, if there's a long product cycle to launch something, talking to customers, vetting things every step of the way with customers does a lot to just reduce the risk of failure. So you don't have to go into a lab and build something for 9 months and then throw it in front of customers and see what happens. But you really inform every step of that development process from ideation through building with those customer insights. We just believe as a company that that's the best way to ensure that we're going to be successful, is to make sure that we're building the things that customers actually like and take some of the guesswork. Another thing, even on projects that are smaller and not quite the big bets, we have a lot of conversations about what we might build, what we can build, what customers might want. When we start hearing just a lot of misalignment and a lot of different perspectives on what customers may build, that's usually a great signal that we should go and talk to customers and understand what our customers actually want, not what the executives or employees of LendingTree think that customers want. And so that comes up very often in our conversations, where we just quickly realize, like, okay, we've all got different ideas about what these customers actually need. Let's go do the science and figure it out for sure.
Great. And Kiki, you made a great point earlier that you pretty much need to do primary research because you don't have sales data, you don't have a product that you can track. So when it comes to identifying your internal teams, and I know you have a small team, so when you have to identify that internal team to champion the project, what are some ways that you do that within your organization?
Well, I bring them in early in the conversation, especially people that I guess may disagree with where we're going. So to build on Chris's points, I'm trying to maybe anticipate the disagreement. There's always tension, right, between the brands out there who's funding the program and you know, it's a tough business to be in, and our agency who knows marketing really well and are fairly new to the category, and then the internal needs and where we're trying to balance everything in here. So we don't actually always agree. So as you can imagine, a farmer in the Midwest, or somebody who runs a processing plant, has a very different idea of what makes a successful advertising than a planner in New York City or in LA or in Chicago. So I'm trying to thread that needle and come up with something that serves everybody. And you can't just make research you know, appeal to everybody, but it because of that very broad range of stakeholders, it bubbles up all the time. We have an abundance of things that we could research, and that's a good thing, I guess.
So those upfront conversations with those stakeholders are so important. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yes, exactly, because you're doing it maybe not for them, but if I can figure out where their heart is or where their passion is or whatever, at least I can try to find something that then we can circle back and meet on in the other end, and so we can get some alignment and at least align on a path forward, even if they're conflicting needs, right? So
right. So we're going to shift gears a little bit to talk about successful partnerships. And Chris, I'll start with you here, but what makes a partnership with a research firm successful in your mind?
There's really like two kind of big buckets of things that we look for. One, obviously the ability to do good research is important. The second piece is the ability to deliver research that's actionable and help us to actually activate the insights that come out of the research process. So on the first one, doing good research, what we really look for is we look for partners that understand our space, understand the customers in our space, have some perspective and background on what sort of things are our customers looking for. Just bringing that wealth of experience and expertise in both the financial space, but also in digital marketing space, and understanding, what do customers expect from their digital experiences right now and going forward. So, a track record of doing really strong research is something we definitely look for. And then the other part of it, as we go through the research process, is advice on how to make things actionable. So helping us communicate with our other stakeholders as we go through this process. To Kiki's point of like bringing people, bring our stakeholders into the conversations, letting them actually listen to customer interviews, letting them see what are we going to be asking customers in surveys. Like those are big things that help us get buy-in on the back end. So having a research partner that's good at communicating with stakeholders and taking the feedback from stakeholders where they do have that pushback that Kiki mentioned, really helping us tailor a project that our stakeholders are going to be excited about using and ultimately get a lot of value from, is a big thing that we look for from partners. And we found in our experience that some partners are great at that and other partners are good at doing the research, but not as good with activating the research. So it's a really important thing for us to understand what is the activation plan, what is the way that we can bring other people with us through this research process, how are you going to present the findings in a way that we can build off it and go and address and build solutions for the things that are coming out of the research. So that actionability thing is just so critical, because we just never want to deliver a PowerPoint presentation at the end of a research project and have it sit in a drawer somewhere. We want to go change customers' lives and create better outcomes in customers' financial experiences. And so that actionability part is just such a huge thing that we always look for and think about as we go into our projects.
Yeah, so in a way, they're kind of an extension of your team, right? Sounds like in terms of the activation.
Yeah,
Kim,
the best partners we found are definitely, that's a perfect way to put it, just an extension of our team and become part of our team.
Right, right. Kim, any builds on what makes a successful partnership in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, so much of what Chris was saying was really resonating. I think regardless of the field you're in, having a partner that can provide you with actionable recommendations, because all of the research we're doing is applied. It's not just research for research's sake. How can it improve our product? For us, again, harkening back to our international work, we work in some really tough places that are challenging contexts, but also difficult to access for lots of different reasons. And so having a partner that has access to the communities we're working with, but also has a strong relationship with them, because we are interviewing children who are vulnerable, parents who are vulnerable and traumatized. So having a strong partner who has relationships with the community, so the community trusts the research process, is really important. And then for us, certainly specific skills to the type of research. Knowing how to interview 4-year-olds is a really important skill. For example, if any of you have ever tried to interview a 4-year-old, anyone on the call, it's not easy. And so it really does take a special set of skills. And so having a partner who understands those skills. And then I would think the third piece is building the relationship, so the partner starts to anticipate your needs before you even sort of have to have kind of, you always have expectation setting, but then a good partner, as you're having a more and more collaborative relationship, can start to anticipate your needs and even build upon things and provide innovations and adaptations that I hadn't even thought of. And so that's also very exciting in a partnership.
I love that. That's a great build. Someone who can anticipate your needs before you've even thought of it. It's a little telepathy, maybe. Kiki, anything to build? I know Chris and Kim stated some pretty good things about strong partnerships. Anything to build onto those?
Yeah, no, I think Kim and Chris were very exhaustive in their answers there. I would echo all of them. One thing maybe just to underscore is I love research partners that come in and are not afraid to take a stand and have a strong POV. So even like going beyond recommendations, right? It's like not necessarily concept A versus concept C, but it's just like, oh my gosh, have you looked at kids? You have to refocus on them, come in and have some passion for the decisions that we're making. And again, just me being a team of one, I know this is sort of a recurring theme here, but that it keeps me psyched, and it creates some excitement, and we get much further than me just coming in with my little pencil behind my ear and be like, oh well, we just have a new data point, right? So so that collaboration between myself and the research partner is just, it's really, really crucial. And then their openness also to work with others, not just me or agency partners, but build on previous research that we have done before, whether done by Radius or done by somebody else. For every point, there's a counterpoint, right? So I really need, if I can find a vendor, they're like, okay, so yes, you were able to pull this up in this syndicated database, but let's see how it can all tie together and what can we glean from this if we triangulate. That's super valuable for me, that they don't just operate in a vacuum and say, this is what we do, and we're going to stay within these parameters. Being able to weave the story together is just very valuable.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you brought that up, because weaving the story is kind of in line with my next set of questions around, and Paul called this crafting the right insights, and you've all talked about it in terms of activation, making sure that the insights can be actioned upon. So I'm just curious, Chris, let's go ahead and start with you. When it comes to the goal of leveraging insights coming out of research, what have you really learned that works and maybe doesn't work within your organization?
Yeah, for us, it starts with making sure that any research that we're doing is closely aligned, almost 100% aligned with a defined company goal that we have. So starting with a clear goal, latching onto that and saying, let's go find out what customers think about this problem, or how can we get customers to take these extra steps with us or become more loyal to us in the future. Like whatever the kind of company aspiration is or goal is, we want to make sure that we're finding how to support those goals with research. And that just is going to make the entire process a little easier, because whenever we get questions about why are we asking these questions or doing this research project in general, we can point back and refocus us on that company goal. So for us, it really starts there. And then to go through the project with our key stakeholders and give them a sense of ownership and participation, and that their voices are being heard throughout this. I mean, certainly I've been through projects where presented out at the end and stakeholders were asked, well, why didn't you ask this? Or why didn't you talk to these type of customers? And so letting the key stakeholders who are going to need to partner with us to actually use the research at the end of it and bring them into the entire process is really critical for us to make sure that the research is as good as possible, as actionable as possible, but that we also maintain that buy-in. And then we also, as we get to the point where we have things to share out and we have some research output that we want the teams to consume, what we like to do is go around individually to our key stakeholders, review it with them, get their feedback, adapt the report to ingest their feedback, so that as we share it out with larger and larger teams, as we get close to the end of the project, that everybody again is felt like not only were they heard through the research process, but there's nothing in the reports, nothing in the recommendations that they haven't seen before, they haven't agreed with before. So just having people kind of nod their heads, key stakeholders nod their heads during those final readout sessions is also really helpful. And then the last thing with leveraging, which is something we're trying to get better at as a company and team, is also being more structured and more process oriented around the ideation sessions that come out of the research. So as the research makes recommendations and defines paths to go down, we're working on getting more and more just structured around the solutioning and sizing of the opportunities that we come up with based on what we've learned from the research. And again, collaboration is completely the key in that step, just like the other steps. So for us, it's all about making research a team sport and not an individual sport, so that everybody on the team feels like they know what to do with it and believe in it.
I love that analogy. It's a team sport. That's great. I might use that. Kim, anything to add in terms of how you ensure that your organization embraces the insights coming out of your research projects?
Yeah, I also love the research as a team sport. I've never thought about it that way, but it's really lovely phrasing. I mean, I think similarly, going back to actionable recommendations. So I think we hear a lot, okay, these findings are great. What do you want us to do with them? Right? That's ultimately the overarching question, I think, to a lot of the research that we do. So ensuring actionable recommendations, but then also options, because a lot of times we will hear findings that are it's just not feasible in terms of our brand or the way that our characters are designed. I think for us, particularly when we test internationally, you may be familiar with Elmo. Elmo speaks in the third person. He only ever refers to himself as Elmo. We don't hear it as much in the US, but we hear it a lot that parents hate it because their kids love it. And so now their kids are referring to themselves in the third person. And so we get this as a common finding, stop using that Elmo in the third person. That's not, for example, that's not going to change because that's part of his character. It's one thing that children love about Elmo. So in that instance, providing options with findings and recommendations that open the door a little bit for how actionable some of the recommendations are, knowing that there are going to be some constraints on what is feasible and what's not. And I think that's always Really, really important. I think also there are times where where internally we'll translate the findings, but there are certain studies for lots of different reasons. Well, we'll really rely on our partner to present directly to the team, to the project team. And I think having that, I think going back to a lot of what Chris and Kiki have said, having that partnership, and it really is a team sport. So having that dynamic, I think, to help facilitate that and set expectations for both the partner and the team on what they can expect from those presentations with the external partners. So there are no surprises, but they feel integral to the process. I think that's been really key for us in leveraging insights.
Yeah, fantastic. Kiki, any thoughts or builds on best practices when it comes to sharing out results, making sure your organization embraces the research?
So I also love the team sport analogy, and just building on that, it's sometimes the team, you have some Division I players, right? And then you have some that just playing rec, soccer perhaps, or I'm not even getting my sports analogies right here. But on the team sport, people have different capabilities and frankly, interest, curiosity into research and insights and all that good stuff, right? Not everybody gets a kick out of pivot tables. So for me, I found sort of on the back end of this, careful curation, just being able to curate the information is really critical again, and so sort of thinking about your audience. I feel like a lot of times we're sort of trying to balance. People have sort of a tendency to either sort of oversimplify the research that you come, and it all like falls down to one little thing, and milk may seem like a simple product, but a lot of times solutions are nuanced. They're not simple. Solution is not like, well, we should just go do this. So I found that there's ways that you can make sure that it doesn't become like an unproductive shorthand that's not helpful over the long run. And then on the flip side of that if you overshare, there's too much data. There's always, people sort of get overwhelmed by the amount of data. And then there's like the new shiny thing, and they'll find like one little data point, and they're like, well, what does this mean? Well, that means we should put all the money into, I don't know, switching milk consumption into smoothies or something like that, right? Because they see a little bold number or radius to put a little, capital A in the corner of it. And so curating the data and the information, the insights, I find is very helpful. Even if it means that it takes a little longer, or you have to do more versions for different people. And then frankly, just to close out, always take the time to answer people's questions. And if they understand the why behind the number, they're much more likely not just to go and spew off like, well, here is headline number 1. Well, why is it? So if you can show in the chart, well, this is because you see what's on the x-axis. This is why this is a 2x2. What does this mean? Anything that's up in this quadrant. It seems simple, and it seems maybe a little silly, but if people can visualize why the headline is what it is, and they can see it, then they're much more likely to get the nuance, I guess, and sort of internalize the insight rather than just repeat it.
Yeah, and building off that, Kiki, do you have a preference as to whether you share out or the research organization and partner shares out the information and the data? And do you find that your organization responds differently, one way or the other?
If it's bad results, I'll make Radius do it. No, I'm just teasing. No, you know what? There's there's instances, right, where having a third party come in brings a lot of credibility to the process. I think I've worked in this industry and been in front of our board for 20 some years. I think they trust me. But it's obviously always better to have a third party come in and say, MilkPep were successful in generating X amount of gallons last year, and if it wasn't for this program, it goes further if it's them saying it rather than me being like, oh, me and my friends. So in that sense, it's very third parties are helpful. But again, it goes back to that trusted partner and the willingness of a research partner to invest in the expertise and understanding your category. It's just I've found that the people around, they love getting outside perspectives, informed outside perspectives, right? You don't want to just want to come in and be like, oh, in this category, but if you can actually put it together, sort of that. And so we have a tendency to become very sort of milk myopic, right? We all like think the same, and we all like have the same passion. We're all trying to drive the same volume of the same product. So having that third party come in and be like, well, you know what, in I don't know, in the savings field, we have, you know, there's things we can take from that, and we have learned from that. It's very, very valuable. And then lastly, it becomes really tiresome to be the only one talking for a long time. I mean, just from a pure presentation standpoint, in front of 10 people, 20 people, 40 people, not one person should never be up there for more than 10, 12 minutes max, I think. I think it's, if you want to engage the audience, make sure they keep listening. It's always good to be able to mix it up some.
Yeah. And I'm curious, I guess this might be my last question. We'll see how much time we have left. But obviously, you know, Kiki, you joked that you have your partner present data that maybe isn't favorable. But I'm sure you all had situations where either your stakeholders just didn't embrace the data or it wasn't well received. I'm just curious, you know, what you do in those situations, or if you have any examples of, you know, what you've done with, you know, information or share out that was not well received. Anyone can start that one.
Yeah, Joanne, I'll jump in there because absolutely. I mean, there's plenty of times where you put a ton of effort and time and your heart and soul into understanding customers, and it seems to fall on deaf ears, or people listen to it and then, you know, they don't want to do anything with it. So I don't know if there's a silver bullet, but some things we do is we try to share the research broadly with lots of different stakeholders. And when we hear some pushback, we certainly, you know, try to invest time with those people who are pushing back or hesitant or just don't seem to care as much, and understand how do we, like, where are those kind of shared goals, shared understandings about what they're trying to accomplish with what we're learning from customers. Now, sometimes they just have goals that are just too fundamentally different than what we're trying to do. And so that is something we can take back and try to do better on future research projects. Or it's something, you know, depending on the research project, sometimes these research projects are not something that for us that need to be dealt with and addressed right away. They can be things that are, you know, ongoing customer opportunities. And if we say, okay, you guys have other priorities right now, let's come back to this in 3 months or 6 months. Sometimes teams will be open to, you know, just punting it down the road a little bit, and then when they get to their next goal planning session, they'll be more open to coming up with some ideas for addressing what we heard in the research. So sometimes patience is key with some partners, and continuing to finesse kind of the message to have it fit with their goals. The other thing is sometimes, you know, across a group of stakeholders for projects we've done, sometimes there are just individual stakeholders who are much more excited and open to using the research than others. And so sometimes it's just simply, let's go where the fire is hot and invest our time and resources into working with the people who are ready to work with it now and are excited to work with it. And we can make, you know, impact for customers that way more quickly sometimes.
Great. Any builds or on that, Kim?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and it's building on what Chris was saying and also going back to a point that Kiki made. I think when it hasn't been well received, going back to the why we were doing the study and explaining why we were doing that, and then also some understandings on why we received the results we did. And then looking at it as when something doesn't work, that is as much, if not more, of an opportunity to innovate, to try to figure out, okay, this didn't work. What are some other approaches, and how can we use research to help you define different pathways, to see it, to frame it more as understanding why we got the results we did, and then trying to see it as an opportunity to experiment and innovate. It doesn't always work, but it you know, to sort of play on people's curiosity around research, I think has worked more often than not for us.
And I love your build about, you know, bringing everybody back to the reason why you did the research. And if you've done what you all talked about earlier in terms of bringing them along on that journey, that should be a very easy refresher, right, on why you did it. And you're not always going to get positive results. Sometimes it is. We have to go back and relook at this. So I think we're going to open up for questions. So Kiki, Kim, and Chris, thank you so much for all of your amazing answers. And I think Paul's going to open up questions.
I am. We have a bunch of questions, and if anybody else would like to ask one in the time that we've got, please do so. Kim, I still want to ask these questions in the third person now. I suppose I should. The first one really kind of gets to the crux of the matter. I think we hear this a lot from people. And the question is exactly, our budgets are always much smaller than our research requests. Do you have any suggestions for tactics to secure more funding for the research that we have to do? Gets to the crux of the matter of a number of things. I'm not sure if anybody wants to take that, but I'll throw that open to the three of you.
We've tried to implement that research will, particularly for philanthropically funded work, that it accounts for 10% of a budget. And so we've tried to make that a metric, regardless of what the budget is. And so that doesn't necessarily address the major problem, but it always helps manage expectations going in of how the size and scope of any research study that you're going to be able to do on the project.
That's helpful.
Yeah, Paul.
Go ahead.
Paul, it's a great question. I don't know how broadly applicable this is, but at LendingTree right now, we are really pushing on this idea of transforming towards even, taking a step change in our ability to do customer jobs for them. And so very fortunately for us right now, we've got a lot of very senior leaders who are advocates and supporting for our approach. And so as they're talking about company goals, we have a good enough relationship with a lot of those folks where we talk about, just bring up that we can't accomplish those goals without doing research and without understanding our customers more. And so they're not going to say yes to everything we do, but at this point we're pretty our company goals are pretty tied towards understanding customers, which has made our lives a heck of a lot easier right now. And then before we were really in this better alignment position that we're in now, the approach we were taking is, and this is hard and it's not perfect, but is really to be intentional and smart about which projects you're trying to do and get the best possible results out of those. And when you can show a win with one project, it's easier to ask for more money next year, or more money next quarter, or whatever your budgeting cycle is. We've always found that to be true.
That's so helpful to get that insight, Chris. Look, I'm conscious of time, folks. I'm going to ask one last question. Kiki, I'll throw it open to you to start. And it's, I often struggle to get my stakeholders to narrow down their list of topics and questions. Any advice?
I think it probably goes back to the current little bit. I mean, that's a little bit why I'm here, right? Is to take the questions and try to figure out what it is that they're really trying to answer, because sometimes the question is not the same thing as what it is that they're trying to answer or what they're trying to solve for. So that sometimes sometimes help a little bit, and then you're like, is this what I'm hearing you saying? Is this what you're trying to solve for? And then you can get closer. Other times you just have to declare. Right, again, with so many different stakeholders, I'm not going to be able to do regional cuts of every single thing I do, because the Northwest brands feel very different from Florida brands. You're just going to have to sort of say, well, we'll get to it next time, or we're putting on the learning agenda. You have to be a little tough like that. And then, I mean, frankly, I find a lot of I think there's ways around it. It goes a little bit to the cost management, the budget management also. Look for partners. We're able to do so much more. It's a little bit trite maybe, but the 1 + 1 = 3. We're partnering with organizations in California, and we share 80% of the same. We have 80% of the same research objectives, and then I get to learn a whole lot about California. And they get to get a national benchmark to compare to. That's just one example. But whenever you have friendly partners, I would do that, and it'll make your dollars go further, and you can frankly answer more of those questions that may not have been able to be funded and prioritized before.
Yeah, Kiki, I would just
love to. Go ahead, Chris, if you've got.
Sorry, Paul. Yeah, real quick. I love what Kiki said about, just essentially refocusing on the goal of the research. I know I've been guilty in the past of trying to do way too much with one research project, and so you can't do everything with one project or one survey or one questionnaire. So when it starts to get too long, there's kind of two things we've done. One is refocus on what is the goal of this project, and sometimes that's not an easy answer to refocus people on. Sometimes that's a long conversation, and that's okay. It's important. The other thing is, like, we have found our partnership with Radius to be very helpful in just letting us know, like, what are the limits that we can ask in one survey or one interview. And so keeping just like that kind of practical limit in place is also helpful in forcing the decisions.
Well, look, guys, I'm conscious of everybody's time, including your own. Thank you, all of you. Joanne, thank you for moderating. Chris, Kiki, and Kim, thank you for being part of this. We've loved the experience. This will be our last online learning activity of 2021. We've enjoyed them with all of our partners. We'll put them together again for 2022. In the meantime, everybody stay safe and enjoy the upcoming holiday period. Thanks, folks.